Okay, so let's jump right into Lizardman, dude. Lizardmans are cool. I've personally put on makeup for Lizardman, and it was not fun. So, Lizardman, this is the first race that has required a tail so far, I believe. So you have to have some sort of lizard tail, and I've seen some pretty weak lizard tails. It's kind of like a bare minimum. But you have to have a tail, and you have to put on facial green like Goblin, and then you have to do a bunch of cross X's, and it's like you can't just like do it very weakly. You can't. It's you got to be very specific because there's a lot of other enemy races that specifically have similar makeup, so you got to be very clear on being a lizard man. And there are also bad lizard men. Uh, and lizardmen, just like dark elf and ghoul and like diekesserin that we talked about, lizardman is on that line of I could be a bad guy very easily. So it it's one of the races that brings suspicion to you when a lizardman is in town. They do not think of you as like a paladin, like a kesserin. They think of you as a sketchy guy. Now, I've met lizardmen and they're pretty cool. There are some people whose characters hate lizardmen, and you're going to. I promise you, you're going to run into it. Um, this does not stop you from playing the game, and this does not stop people from being nice to you, and this does not stop people from uh, letting you enjoy the game because most people are very, very reasonable. I don't think I've ever encountered a situation where somebody was like completely rude to somebody because they're a lizardman. However, let's see. Their history is not very good looking. It's not good. Um, slowly integrating their lesser combat, blah blah blah. Yeah, they're very combat focused race. These guys are fighters. You're not playing a caster if you're playing a lizardman, as far as I know. Um, trying to fend off more civilized races. So if you're thinking of barbarian, like human barbarian, or we'll get into Minotaur too, but like Minotaur, lizardman, and human barbarian, whereas human barbarian are kind of like the typical D&D fantasy barbarian races. Like you want to, and like maybe like ogre or troll, those guys too. But typically, lizardmen are a cool like I'm super angry type of race to play. I've met personally, I think I've seen two Lizardman PCs, and they were cool. They looked so freaking cool. They looked badass. I'm gonna be completely honest. They were the one guy I remember the most is he was all black, and he had fangs and stuff too, because he like he went hard in the costuming department, and he had like tactical medieval stuff, and he was wearing like a half mask for the lower part of his face. And this was pre-COVID, so he was like wearing a mask to look cool, and he just looked like a total assassin type dude. It was so cool. And when he fought, he was pissed. Like you could see the anger. I don't. Maybe that guy had some like mental problems, or maybe he was like really angry that day. But he clearly role played being a lizardman super well. That's like the image of lizardmen that I have in my head, and they're so cool. I don't think that it's on the history, but I'm going to get right to the elephant in the room for anybody that knows about lizardmen lore is that enslaving. So you're playing a green base lizardman. There are like 10 different colors of lizardmen, and everything other than the green ones are like, as far as my experience has said, are portrayed as a slaving race. They enslave other people and they enslave other races. Green lizardmen get a pass because they're nice and they're the closest to regular humanoid, and the further down in the color spectrum in terms of like red, white, like red, white, purple, and other and like brown lizardmen, I think is a thing too. Um, those are all races that enslave, as far as I know. So recently, in terms of the lore, Aldratha blew up and reformed, and there was like a big time skip. So this is like feels kind of like a new world, and that might not be the case for Lizardmen anymore. But there are definitely players that lived through whole season, like year-long arcs of Lizardmen being a problem. So that is something that you need to know if you're going to play a Lizardman. And they're very much the biggest and strongest should lead. I think that's another thing, is that they're very natural. Yeah, a new general was appointed through right of succession, which is a pit style arena fight, right? It's very much a I'm the strongest, and I think I'm the strongest, and you're weak, so I'm going to challenge you, and now I'm going to lead. And as soon as somebody else wants to challenge him, they challenge. Like it's like very very tribal mentality in terms of lizardmen. And I'm pretty sure lizardmen live in tribes, as far as I'm aware. So like typical D&D barbarian, lizardmen really solid pick in terms of the history and the costuming. We're going into the skills here now. So athletics, we're gonna see some stuff that we've seen. Athletics, claws. Claws is sweet. Enhanced strength is okay. Reduced knavery. They're on the I'm stabbing you in the back style of fighting as opposed to the I'm frontal fighting. But I've seen weapon mastery using Lizardmen. It's not too big of a difference at the end of the day. Resist disease, sense poison. They don't get a resist poison? That's neat. Speak with lizards. I personally have no stories of this. Like I had a story with speak with spiders, um, but I have not personally seen speak with lizards ever used. Me personally, but it's one build. I If I was playing Lizardman, I'd pick it up. Leather skin. Let's do some math real quick. So 45 is the quantity you can get. Your value is 2 points per one build. So 45 times 2 is 90. So you get 90 armor. And if for some reason you get cannot use armor, it becomes 3 to 1 instead of 2 to 1. But essentially, you get your scales as a lizard man as armor. And all armor, this is text for all armor basically. All armor, if you have 50 armor and 50 body, and you take 51 points of damage, so you go to 49 health because you take your armor first. You can step back, pat yourself, and like readjust your armor, and for 1 minute, and then and then all that armor becomes refreshed. So armor is like pretty good. Armor is definitely something that you want to pick up most of the time if you're going to be a fighter. And being able to do this racially is okay. It's a lot of build. That's 45 build you're looking at for just only 90 armor. When in terms of the value sheet, I think in terms of if you go back to episode 102 when we were talking about the wealth chart and priorities, there was an example of armor there, and it was like 2 wealth. Like you get 60 starting wealth, and it was like 2 wealth for 5. And that's like essentially free at character creation. However, this has the upside of you don't have to wear physical armor, and like 90 armor is essentially how much armor you're going to want. Uh, I would say 90 to 100 armor is like a breastplate and like maybe some hand stuff and some shoulder stuff in terms of armoring. So 90 and not having to physically actually wear armor is pretty good. And it's just like Flesh Golem, which I think this is the exact same skill that Flesh Golem got. Stacks with normal armor as well, so you can have this and then also wear armor. So yeah, leather skin, pretty good. So as a base race, they're okay. So leather skin, reduced knavery. They don't have resist diseases, or they don't have resist poisons, but they have sense poison, which is interesting. Uh, and like enhanced strength is okay, claws is okay, right? So, but this is like a solid kit. This is a solid kit. You wouldn't be lacking in much. Maybe the resist poisons compared to some other races, but this isn't very much lacking. And 90 free armor is nothing to free armor. It's build, but 90 armor is nothing to like laugh at. And let's get a little bit into the elders. You can breathe water, which is super useful when it comes up, and it's only one build. Uh, death, poison, spittle, 2 build 10 times, 50 death poison. That's pretty good. So if this breaks somebody's armor, or if they don't have armor, this brings somebody to the death state instantly. Which is super cool. And the roleplay for this looks so freaking sick, man. Somebody going like, oh man, I don't have a video camera to like show you, but like people licking their own weapons is super cool. This was part of like what that assassin guy that I was talking about during the costume section was doing. He was doing stuff like this all the time, and he was doing it really angrily, and it was sick. You get to throw death poison. which is even better. Like that's amazing, and it's only 3. Man, I should play a Lizardman, dude. I want to play all these races. All these races are so sweet. Um, Aquatic, and this is definitely one of a lot more out of the park than a lot of the other races in terms of like lore and history and costuming and like the archetype that you're fitting into. This is very much like I'm an assassin type of archetype, which is cool because we haven't really seen that a whole lot. Uh, Aquatic concealment. If you're in water, you get to skirt astral, which means you become invisible. Which is pretty okay. And at least in Indiana, there's a whole section of the camp that we play at that is by a lake. There's a lake at the camp. So when you're in that kind of area, it works. Or when you're in, and there will be times when you're in like an underground cave and there's like a river running through it. That's relevant too. Uh, However, I don't really think it's the best out of all the aquatic of all the concealment, because this is like a continual thing, because there's like woodland concealment is probably the best because it's like I'm in the forest and you larp in forests, right? But so out of all the concealments, I would say this is probably the weakest one, but it's still really good. You still get a concealment, which is amazing. Endure water. So there's ice, right? This does not mean ice. This means endure water and breathe water, which is super good because when you when you go on underwater mods, it's really awesome to not have to worry about that. And there have been times when it's like, hey, this whole mod is going to take place underwater. Better be prepared for that. Uh oh, this is such a good skill. Regrow limbs. So it's like if you get your tail cut off as a lizard, they can grow back their tails. So you get to do this with your limbs. So there are times when you get potatoed and some monster that has really sharp claws or something is throwing sever limb, sever limb, sever limb, sever limb, and that's like all they're doing. And instead of having somebody cast a spell or a medicine man do their or pay resources or an alchemy or something, like all this other stuff requires resources to get back your limbs or to wait until or you're limbless until the next game, right? Because when you start the game, you get to have all your limbs back, which is thank God. Uh, you get to say I regrow my limb 1, I regrow my limb 2, I regrow my limb 3, and you get it back. That is amazing, and I would pay 10 build for this every day of the week, man. And you just get to do it whenever. Um, which there's some cool roleplay stuff where like somebody will cut off your tail as a joke, and then you can be like, oh, I regrow that anyway. Unaffected by disease. We saw this on Goblin. It's okay. Poison is a little bit more scarier. Oily skin. Oh yeah. Okay, so you know how you get a breathe water and endure water? So the thing about water in Shifted Lands is that when you go underwater, all of your stuff gets destroyed. So if you're a spellcaster and you have a book, it all gets melted in the water. So water is kind of scary for spellcasters, and like paper, all water soluble items get coated in like all water soluble stuff, and that's like a pretty big list of very relevant things a lot of the time. Um, get destroyed, just gone. So when a caster goes underwater, they have to like cast a bunch of stuff and they have to be able to breathe water and they have to do a whole bunch of X, Y, and Z to make sure that they're not gonna just be like nerfed while they're on the adventure, right? So oily skin allows you to all water soluble for 24 hours become coated in oil, preventing the destruction of water while in your possession. So all your items you purchase from walking in the game are instead of being in your possession for 24 hours. Okay, so once per game, a water mod comes up like once every a year, maybe. So, but when you go on that mod, man, you are well prepared. So, skipping the water stuff and looking at Elder Lizardman as a whole, you're getting free armor, you're getting reduced knavery, you're getting like a little bit of strength and claws, and you're getting these death poison stuff, which is super good, and regrow limbs. So you're really playing Elder Lizardman for death poison spittle, because throwing 50 death poison up to 10 times in an event, pretty good. And then you're playing for regrow limbs to say I'm basically going to not care if you're severing my limbs. Oh. Uh, Pretty good. That's kind of the reason why you're playing Lizardman. Essentially, are these two spells, are these two skills, which is super cool. Being able to 20 times a game have a 50 death poison effect, very relevant. You could easily use 3 of these on an adventure, and you maybe go on 2 or 3 adventures a game. And like, yeah, Elder Lizardman, cool race, cool story. And a lot of Elder Lizardman, I feel like a lot of Lizardman stuff, I feel like needs to be explored. I think there's not a whole lot of Lizardmen, as far as I'm aware. I've personally seen 2 PCs, and they weren't regular players as far as I was aware. Um, but yeah, more people should play Lizardmen. Lizardmen are cool. And so these are the green Lizardmen. The other colored Lizardmen, I'm pretty sure, are on the retirement race list, and they do different stuff. They have like sleep poisons and stuff, and like some of them are neat. But yeah, Lizardmen are cool.